You are speaking English right now. But English almost didn't exist. The language you think in, dream in, and argue in. It was built from wreckage, from invasions, from desperation, from the mouths of people who had no idea they were creating something that would one day reach every corner of the planet. It started with silence. Britain, 5,000 years ago, was not empty. People lived there. They spoke languages we have never decoded. Languages lost so completely that not a single word survives. We call them the ancient Britons, and we know almost nothing about what they said to each other. Then the Celts arrived. Around 600 BC, Celtic tribes pushed west across Europe and settled the British Isles. Their language, a family of tongues we now call Brythonic, became the first language of Britain we can trace. Welsh, Cornish, and Breton are its surviving children, but barely a word of it made it into English. Think about that. The people who lived here for centuries left almost no trace in the language you're hearing right now. Why? Because in 43 AD, Rome arrived, and Rome didn't ask. The Roman legions occupied Britain for nearly 4 centuries. Latin became the language of law, trade, and power. Roman roads cut through Celtic lands. Roman cities rose from the ground. But when Rome finally collapsed and withdrew its legions in 410 AD, something strange happened. Latin faded. The Celts kept their tongues, and Britain became a linguistic vacuum. That vacuum was about to get filled, violently. Starting around 450 AD, waves of Germanic tribes began crossing the North Sea. The Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes. They came from what is now northern Germany and Denmark. They were not invited. They pushed the Celtic populations west into Wales and Cornwall and north into Scotland, and they brought their language with them. It sounded nothing like modern English. If you heard it today, you would not recognize a single word. Linguists call it Old English, and it is the true foundation of what you are speaking right now. Words like water, earth, man, night, house, eat, sleep, all of them come from this moment, from these invaders, from these people crossing a cold sea looking for land. Then, in 793 AD, the Vikings came. The Norse raids began with the monastery at Lindisfarne and never really stopped. The Vikings didn't just raid, they settled. They built towns, they married, they talked. And their Old Norse language was close enough to Old English that speakers could understand each other badly across the gap. Out of that friction came new words: sky, egg, knife, leg, window, they, them, and their. The most common pronouns in the language are Viking words. The English language absorbed them like a sponge, but the biggest blow was still coming. 1066, the year that broke English. William the Conqueror crossed the Channel from Normandy and defeated the Anglo-Saxon King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. In a single afternoon, the ruling class of England changed completely. The new lords, the new king, the new church. They all spoke French. For the next 200 years, English was the language of peasants. French was the language of power. If you wanted land, you spoke French. If you wanted justice, you spoke French. If you wanted to survive, you learned 2 languages and kept them separate. Historian David Crystal has called this period the Great Suppression. English was never banned. It was just ignored. But languages are stubborn. English survived in the fields, in the kitchens, in the mouths of ordinary people who had no reason to stop speaking it. And then, slowly, the 2 languages began to merge. When the Norman nobles eventually lost their lands in France in 1204, they had to choose a side. They chose England. And for the first time, the upper class had a reason to learn the language of the people below them. The result was extraordinary. English swallowed French whole. Words for raw animals came from Anglo-Saxon farmers: cow, pig, sheep. Words for cooked meat came from French-speaking lords at the table: beef, pork, mutton. 2 words for the same thing. 2 social classes. 1 language. This is why English has more synonyms than almost any other language on earth. It didn't evolve in a straight line. It was built from collisions. By the 1300s, English was back. Geoffrey Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales in the vernacular, the everyday language of real people, and proved that English could carry art, weight, and beauty. Then came the printing press. William Caxton set up the first English printing press in 1476. Suddenly, one version of English, the London dialect, the dialect of power and trade, began to spread across the country. Spelling started to standardize. Grammar began to freeze. The wild, shifting, living thing that English had been for 1,000 years started to calcify into something fixed. It never fully froze. It never will. English today absorbs words from every language it touches. Shampoo from Hindi, algebra from Arabic, kiosk from Turkish, tycoon from Japanese, safari from Swahili. No other language on earth has borrowed as aggressively, as shamelessly, and as hungrily. Because that's what English has always done. It has never been pure. It has never been simple. It has never belonged to any one people. It was built by invaders who became settlers who became the invaded, by peasants who outlasted kings, by a printing press in a London shop, by millions of mouths across 1,000 years who kept talking even when history tried to silence them. You didn't inherit English. You inherited the chaos that made it, and now it's yours.